everyone's attention. Thank you for coming tonight. I would ask you that you silence your cell phones if you haven't done that already. I want to welcome everyone. Please join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Nicole, could you give us a roll call, please?
Bothwell?
Yes.
Caudell?
Yes.
Hicks?
Here.
Kelly?
Here.
Nevers? Knuckles? Pearson?
Here.
Poland? Here. Schultz?
Here.
Stewart?
Yes.
Todd?
Here.
Atkins?
Yes, here. Okay, like for you, item number 3, would you please review the minutes from the February 5th meeting? Looks like we got your name right, John.
Mr. President, I move to approve the minutes.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Soltz. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mrs. Poland. Roll call, please.
Bothwell?
Yes.
Caudell?
Yes.
Hicks?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Pearson?
Yes.
Poland? Yes. Schultz?
Yes.
Stewart?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes. All right, moving on to number 4, public hearings. Old business, we have none. New business, we have 4.2-1 Jonesboro TIF. Looks like we have some Jonesboro town guests here. I would ask that Mr. Clayton please introduce the guests we have from Jonesboro, if you don't mind.
Yes, so in the audience we have our city attorney, Mike Connor, the mayor of Jonesboro, Mr. Bob Goins, and ready to present online is our TIF legal counsel, Ms. Lisa Lee from Ice Miller.
You hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Lisa Lee. I'm an attorney with Ice Miller, and I am outside counsel for the city of Jonesboro. I first want to thank you for allowing me to appear virtually. That's very helpful. The city of Jonesboro, their redevelopment commission on February 13th took initial action to adopt resolution number 2-2024 to do 2 things. One is to initially create a single-family housing tax increment financing, or TIF, area and a commercial downtown TIF area. They are putting these things in place in order to hopefully encourage, incentivize both multifamily and single-family housing that is much needed in the city of Jonesboro. This process, as far as the Plan Commission, the Grant County Plan Commission, you are step 2 in really kind of a long process. So we'll talk about what the Plan Commission does tonight, but if you go ahead and approve the order that we're going to be asking for, It then goes to 2 different public hearings of the Redevelopment Commission and 2 different city council meetings, as well as a public meeting in the area in which they're trying to create the single-family housing TIF area. So there's a lot of procedures that we have to go through to do this. The city does not have their own plan commission. Their planning is done through the Grant County Plan Commission. So the role of the Grant County Plan Commission this evening is to determine whether or not the plan that the city has for developing these 2 TIF areas conforms to the plan of development for the city of Jonesboro. And if it doesn't, then we would ask that the plan, if you find that it doesn't, we would ask that the Plan Commission let us know how it doesn't conform to the city's plan of development. And then the Redevelopment Commission has an opportunity to go back and amend the Resolution 2-2024 to make it conform to the Plan Commission's idea of the plan of development for the city. We do have 3 people with the city there in attendance. I am happy to answer any legal questions that you might have. If you want some discussion of what we're looking to do, it literally is create a single-family housing TIF area, provide the opportunity to construct infrastructure, to bring infrastructure to that area in order to encourage private development to come and build single-family homes. That's the single-family housing piece of this. The downtown/commercial multifamily housing piece also involves the ability to construct infrastructure to, again, try to encourage private development to bring much needed housing and much needed commercial to the downtown area. So with that, as Clayton mentioned already, we do have Mayor Goins in the audience, and we have local counsel Michael Connor as well.
Okay. So do we want to hear from Jonesboro representatives at this time? Anyone want to share anything? Hearing none? So, Mr. Glickfield, I think I'll reference to you in regard to, she noted that we are to determine whether the plan conforms with the city of Jonesboro. So, Ryan, maybe you...
You
Yes.
should have a 1-page order, I hope, in front of you that makes that finding. That was provided to Mr. Mallett to get on the agenda.
Back of your packets, last page.
So if I may, Mr. President,
Please.
the large multi-page thing that the Jonesboro Redevelopment Commission, that's what the Jonesboro Redevelopment Commission passed. That goes into
Correct.
detail of Jonesboro's plans. You're obviously welcome to look through it to make sure it conforms with the area-wide zoning commission. The only thing that this board needs to approve is this final page. Which
1-page
just
order, yes, correct.
Yes, that just essentially says it conforms to the development plan laid out for the city of Jonesboro.
And again, it will go to 2 public hearings and 2 city council meetings as well for approval.
It appears that certainly the representatives of Jonesboro are aware if the requirements are met or not. Maybe just for the record, have Mayor Goins quickly confirmed that that has been looked at and studied, and then for our record indicates that he's satisfied with that, and then I think you have the evidence you need to move forward.
Mr. Goings, would you be willing to come forward to do that, or Mr. Connor in your representation, however you folks feel?
Good evening. This prevents me from having to say what my client meant to say was. No, he'd be very good. We'd just like to assure you that we have no reason to believe that this plan would have any inconsistency with any of your plans for Jonesboro. This is nothing but good. This is something that's going to hopefully lead to development in Jonesboro. We're making some really good progress, and thanks in part to your folks and getting some properties knocked down. We've got good things happening in Jonesboro. This is really kind of perfunctory. I mean, your function is important, but I hope you can tell there's lots more opportunity for the public to comment on this, lots of chances for the public to speak to this. I don't know that there's any opposition to it whatsoever. So if there's any questions you have that I can answer or Lisa Lee can answer, we'd be glad to do so.
Open it up to the commission. Questions for Mr. Connor?
Is the land that we're talking about for the TIF all within the city limits of Jonesboro? Or is there land outside that needs to be annexed, or is annexation necessary?
Lisa, I think
No.
you'll speak to that.
Yeah, no, every parcel that is a part of this is within the boundaries of the city of Jonesboro, and no annexation is requested or required.
I know sometimes you get opposition to TIF districts, like if you're trying to turn farmland into something that it's not. It's nothing like that here. There's nothing controversial about this. It's just trying to make it advantageous for development in areas that are already ripe for that. We just want to make it riper.
Other questions from the commission? Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Connor.
Thank you. We appreciate your service to the citizens of Grant County and Jonesboro.
So I'm assuming we're ready for a motion to approve. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion from Mr. Bothwell. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Mr. Cottle. Roll call, please.
Bothwell,
Yes.
Caudill,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Pearson,
Yes.
Poland. Yes. Schultz,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Todd.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, thank you, folks. Looking forward to.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Just need your signature.
This one,
Yes.
before we leave. That work? Okay. All right, okay, moving on. Number 5, reports, resolutions, communications, and general discussion. Why do we have the wrong attorney there? Okay, you're not looking like Kyle Persinger or Mr. Glickfield, but we'll honor your report.
I could not.
Oh, that was the old one. She fixed it.
We went to court recently and got a couple more structures for orders of demolition, so we've been very active on that front. We're trying to get as much down as we can, and everything's going quite well. Staff's coming prepared, ready to go, and we're getting them taken care of, trying to clean the county up.
All right. Anything else?
No.
Thank you for what you're doing. Okay, Director Malat.
To come right off of what David said, we just finished our third demo. Katie got that one down, and they're working on Overman next.
Yes.
They're lining them up, so we're starting to get that momentum back again that we had before we lost our building inspector. So court's moving well. I don't think we get back into court though till April, so we got a little bit of a hump to get over. But I've got a director's report I can email out. I just didn't get it finished today. I mean, it's done. I can read it to you, but it'd probably be easier just to send it out to you guys like I normally do.
Is there anything on there you'd like to highlight, Ryan?
Current building funds, we have 109, 457.75 right now in unsafe funds, but I believe the last 2 demos are not out of that total yet. We haven't got those bills back yet. Well, yeah, there is, well, I don't know if we should. Right now, we are looking at, Mike Kleinpeter is actually looking into
what kind of Okra grants may be available out there. We've got 2 downtown buildings in Jonesboro that we've currently got demo orders on, with another demo contract in Upland for the print shop, and King's Academy has come through with trying to get J.C. Knight down. One of the things when we were finishing our application for the comprehensive plan, when I was talking to Mike Kleinpeter, we got into unsafe structures, and he said that there are Okra grants out there for unsafe structures. So he is looking into what we might be able to do. There may be Okra monies that will help us get those 4 buildings down, and the reason we need help, those 4 buildings are highway department. They're too large for our highway department to do. So we are going to have to bid those out, and bidding those out could put us between $80,000 and $100,000 per building, where when our highway department can do it, we can usually get that down to 20 or 30. Obviously, to take all of that down would take us about 8 years, and we wouldn't be able to take anything else down but those 4 buildings. So he is looking into any type of Okra money that might be out there available, to where if we could get $500,000 in unsafe structure funds, then we could go to the commissioners and to the council and possibly ask for ARPA monies to actually be our
Matching?
matching funds at about $55,000 instead of $500,000.
Are those contingent on our receipt of the comprehensive plan Okra
No.
grant? So
No.
they'd be separate?
That, when we did our income survey and become eligible for those Okra grants, it opened up a whole world of grants to us. So this is the first one we're looking at. We're hoping to get some information on that as soon as he is actually, today and tomorrow, he is at an Okra conference that he is going to talk to certain people about our specific situations. He's supposed to get back with me on Wednesday. As soon as I find out, I will forward that along.
Are most of those grants available through Okra? Will they go through the APC?
Well, that's what we've got to find out. It could depend on who owns the property, whether or not it goes through us with them being under our umbrella, or if it would have to go through Jonesboro. Again, what's available, and when we find that out, it's pulling everyone together to say, hey, here's what we can do and how we can do it.
Yeah, I think we need to make a real strong effort to see what grants are out there and make sure that we're doing everything we can to receive those. Yeah. Update on the Okra grant as far as when we will know?
That application has been submitted. We should know March 15th whether or not we get that grant or not.
Okay.
On the comprehensive plan, you mean?
On the
That's
comprehensive
for the
plan.
comprehensive plan.
Ryan, is there any way you could take the contractors, take part of the building down to the safe or usable height at the highway department, pick up the rest?
We've asked them, they've walked the buildings for the Jonesboro buildings and J.C. Knight. They said it's just too much brick, too much for them. On another note, they're actually, David White is looking to try to possibly get dumpsters for the highway department and possibly a haul truck too. So that could save us additional money. So he's working on one end, but the others are just, they're too big, the electrical lines are too close, or like we have in Jonesboro, we have a couple that are attached that, we knock this down, we could hurt this one, and they're uncomfortable.
And for King's Academy specifically, their electricity in their working facility runs through the old J.C. Knight facility. And so that will all have to be rerouted with proper work and permits before we could even consider a partial tear down. But all the more reason why it has to be torn down, so that they're not left in an emergency situation with no power.
Are they on a 12-month or 9-month educational program?
9-month, they're K through 12.
Okay.
Another thing we would note, we're currently working with Taylor University, also with Dispatch and Bob Jackson with EMA on trying to look at Taylor University. Taylor University has asked us to come in and look at possibly getting addresses to the buildings inside of Taylor. Right now, if you look up Taylor address is one big square, the whole thing. So they have some issues if local is busy or can't get there and they pull in Matthews or a different fire station. They're not sure where everything's at. So we're going to sit down next, I think the March 14th. We've had an initial meeting to kind of go through and discuss what we're looking for, what they're looking for, and requirements in our ordinance for addresses. He's going to come back in and sit down with Brenda and try to start looking at how to grid that out for the university,
That's March 14th
March 14th.
with Brenda.
Yep.
Okay.
So like I said, some of this is just little stuff.
That's what I got a question about, the little stuff.
Okay.
I want to know what qualifies 609 West Main to get a permit to rebuild that house.
Are you talking about 509?
Or 509, I'm sorry, I said 62 maybe, I don't know. The 509, that house, I mean, I thought we had it in court where it was gonna be demoed, and then all of a sudden, here they are down there working on it. It's awful. Right?
Is that the one we walked through?
I just want to know what qualifies to get a permit. You can't turn anybody down for a permit on an unsafe structure like that? That's
Well-
probably the worst house in Van Buren.
And I don't disagree. I really don't. I've wanted that thing down for years. But if they're willing to put the money in to save it, there's not a lot I can do. But that's where we come up with the probationary permit, that if they're gonna get in there, if you'll remember before, they would come in and they would get a permit for 2 years, and it was a set it and forget it. With our probationary permits, it's 90 days. If you're making progress, we'll give you another 90 days. If we get in there in 90 days and they haven't done anything, then it's done. But we are not to a demo order yet, I don't believe, so it hasn't been ordered
I'm just
now.
catching a lot of heat for it, so
Oh, I'm
I
sure.
probably should say something.
I'm sure that house is sunk. We know they're gonna have to replace, almost everything inside.
So far, they have replaced all the floor in the room that we walked in and on back. I have signed off on some of the flooring that they've done. They've done a lot of work. They've lifted it up and put some foundation down finally.
And they're telling us that they'll be done before 90 days, which would be hard to believe. But that's kind of why we wanted you there too, to, before we do this, we want you to see it too.
I'll keep an eye. I'm
Yeah.
close.
To answer Jerry's question, is there anything that would allow us to deny a permit?
Usually when we get into this, because we do get into tax sales and things like that, where people, they buy a house for $5,000 and think, well, I'll put 5,000 in it and move in tomorrow, and it's like, that's not gonna happen. Again, that's where, if it is a code case house, generally, we want to go meet them first. We'll go meet them at the house and walk the house like we did with Jerry. We kind of walk through, what are you doing? What's the plan? We talk about, 90 days, got to make progress. A lot of times we'll have that conversation like the house he's talking about, there's not very many people who are going to walk in here, spend $20,000 to buy this home, spend $40,000 to fix it up, and then have a $40,000 home when they're done.
Now, when you say code case, clarify that for me. What's a code case?
So that's your unsafe structures, that's anything that deals with me, your case houses.
That somebody would have to report?
Yes, we're
Yes.
complaint based.
Okay.
It's something we've got in the pipeline working to court if we don't get compliance.
Okay.
I think the one house, the problem we had is we kept getting different owners.
Yep.
Yeah, we kept flipping numbers.
They shuffle them around. I don't know how they do it.
So we'd go after one, and then as soon as we found out and could make contact, it went from John Doe to Jane Doe LLC.
Okay.
And we chased, some of them we chase.
Other items for your report, Ryan?
Yoder Farm, that hasn't been, we haven't talked about that in a long time. That's the horse track out by Matthews. They are back up and underway. They've talked to the drainage board. As far as the DNR, Scott Dean from DNR had sent an email noting that there was still an open file on it. If you remember, this is where the Connex box was put into the creek to become a bridge. All of that has been straightened out. DNR, they were working with DNR, but Scott Dean, which is our contact, didn't know that they were working with someone else in DNR. So I believe all of that is straightened out. They're working on, they got, what they get in the drainage board, Jim? But they come in and, for that little piece of track, can't remember.
Downsized and got variance to
Yeah.
come on the high bank close to it.
Yeah.
To access will be on the other side, so it's okay, we gave them variance.
So that's moving along. And that's really all. I mean, everything else is just updates.
Okay. Other commission members, other questions for Mr. Malat for the APC office?
How's the software transition going and the website transition? That was a concern last month. Like silence.
We are completely transferred over to it. We are, you know, my goal is to spend most of January working on it and combing through it, and that didn't happen. February, kind of the same thing, was to get in, and that hasn't really happened, just because of how busy we've been. It's not where, I mean, it's
not horrible, but
Yeah.
it's got its growing pains. So obviously, it's new, it's different, but I mean, it's not terrible.
We want to get things like, right now, our residential permit is kind of a catch-all. We also have a sign permit, we have an electrical permit, but we would like to do, I'm just, on the residential end of it, the permits that we do the most, like a roof, that sort of stuff, we want to separate the roof out so the roof is on its own. Right now, it's part of the residential, so if you apply to do a roof, you're also going to be talking about the square footage of your home, how many bathrooms, a lot of questions that really don't have anything to do with your roof. So I mean, that's where I'm saying, as we're trying to go through and, okay, let's establish this and let's establish this.
Are we still receiving software support?
We at this point, spend $7,000 a year to have their software. Now, we have IT, but right now, they're mostly working with the health department.
Did we start with the training lady or
Yeah,
training
Station.
person? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we've got Station, we've also got Tracy Troutner.
And they're still with us.
Yeah, so I mean, they're a phone call away. If we run into issues, we get a hold of them. We've got something going on. We keep getting disconnected from the server right now, and they're trying to figure it out on their end, because they said none of their other people are getting disconnected. But it's you know, Grace or Rita will come running in and say, oh, we can't get on again, and I've got to get a hold of them, and they clean our cache or something, and we can get back on. So
Our IT people do that, or is that on their end?
That's from the server, so the server's on their end. Things, Nicole's been working with the inspection part of it. I mean, one of the things with hers, if she pulls it up, she's got a map off the get-go, so I mean, there are some pluses. But to add stuff to it, we're having to go to a separate scheduling thing to get it in there, so we're trying to work it. I mean, there's little things that we want to work on our end that if I could get a developer in here and say, okay, here's the schedule, you do it, that they'd be going, oh, that don't work. So that's the stuff we're working on.
Okay.
And just wanting to really, you know, again, wanting to spend, I need to spend some hours on it, not an hour here and a half hour there.
Okay. Other questions, commission members? All right. Okay, in regard to rules and procedures, you've been issued an updated copy with some comments that Ryan has placed on there in red. Is that correct, Ryan?
Yes.
Of questions that I submitted to him. I think this is a good exercise, considering the number of new people that we have on the commission, that you guys review this so that you can become familiar with really what is supposed to guide us. And Dr. Bothwell brought up the fact that there is a situation with APC where we would actually have to fill out finding of facts, where we have that sole decision-making power. And have you added something for that, Ryan?
Your second packet that went along with that should be seven different finding of facts found throughout the ordinance.
Okay. Would be this, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And when we talked about that, Ryan, you said this would be a pretty lengthy exercise for us to try and fit into the rules and procedures, but I'd like to at least be able to.
Not findings. When you talk about the ordinance.
Okay.
The procedures of the ordinance, we have got procedures for just text amendments, CAFOs. I mean, everything that we do, a lot of it has a different procedure. And if we put each procedure in, you're going to add 20, 30 pages to our rules of procedure.
Okay.
Finding of facts, you might be able to come up with a general, or we could actually, if you would look at it and could come up with something that is universal, we could change finding of facts throughout the whole ordinance so that they were all the same if it would apply that way.
Dr. Bothwell, do you have any recommendations or suggestions on this area?
The 7 that you've come up with, did you do that with legal counsel or?
I didn't, they're in the ordinance. It was not mine.
They're in?
They're in our ordinance.
Okay, I know that the ones that we dealt with the CAFO, there were 6.
Or maybe there's, I guess, 6 or 7.
Okay. Has there been anything?
Okay, there's 6 then.
Yes. Has there been anything done to adjust a couple of those? For example, the first finding of fact, back when we were dealing with the CAFO, had something to the effect of there will be no adverse effect on property values adjacent to the CAFO. And there was no wiggle room. I talked at length with Mr. Elliott about that. You can't prove that. It's not a finding of fact. It's not a fact. We don't know that it's not going to have an effect. We don't know that it will, either way. So it's not a finding of fact. That was one of the issues that ended up getting us sued twice. Okay, so anyway, has there been anything done to change that?
No, these are all as is, been in the ordinance forever, how long?
Before we can do anything, my suggestion is that before we do anything, we've got to deal with that. We've got to work with Dave to see what kind of wiggle room we can put in. For example, could we put in, there will not be a significant effect, or there will not be a great effect, or there not more than one standard deviation, or, you know, is there any wiggle room at all? The way it's stated right now, there is no way that a person in their right mind could say, yes, there will be no. You can't prove that. And that's, actually, that's what cost the last person that had a CAFO up before us to lose that case, because people sitting on the commission at the time said, you know, I can't agree with that. And something else that needs to be known among our new membership is that if there are 6 and you're wanting to approve the CAFO in this particular case, you have to answer yes to all of them. You can't say, no, I can't accept that one, but the other 5 are okay. You go to court, you get beat. That's what we were advised by Mr. Elliott, our attorney. And I talked on multiple occasions with him about, hey, you know, that doesn't make any sense. You know, but it's a really sticky kind of thing.
So where is that text that we're referencing here? Is that state code? Is that in our area wide?
That's what the question was, and we took it to Mr. Person. I took it to Chuck. First of all, back when I was president, we had real concerns over it because of the CAFO thing. So I talked to the commissioners about the opportunity to go to Mr. Persinger, who was their attorney, to say, hey, we've got a real problem here, how can we get this fixed? Commissioner said, yeah, please do. That was at the direction of Mr. Parsley, Mr. Mowry at the time, and Mr. Burton. So I did. I went over to Kyle. Yeah, I'll take a look at that. I went back and talked to him a couple of different times, and for whatever reason, he did not ever do anything with it. I even wrote in what I thought would be a solution to those things. Later on, when it came down for rules and regulations, Mr. Millard and Mr. Breedy were seeking the work that had been done by a committee that Mr. Breedy had established to do rules and regulations. And they wanted to not have that committee report, but they wanted to know what the committee had done.
David, do we need a motion for you to look into this?
Well, I think I see exactly what Dr. Bothwell's talking about. Just to kind of give everybody who's not up to speed, what Ryan did is there are 6 areas where we have to have specific findings of facts after a hearing is held. Dr. Bothwell's
Regulated by what?
I'm assuming our ordinance.
Yeah, this is copy and
The area
paste
wide
from
zoning
the
ordinance.
area-wide ordinance.
Now, some of this might also be statutory, and I was just going to ask Ryan specific, because he's referring specifically to the area of CAFO and the findings of facts to CAFOs. And he's referring to, and he is correct, there are 6 items that you would have to find. Each and every one of these you have to find to be able to grant whatever the request is. And one of them is under B, the proposed use will not injure or adversely affect the use or value of the adjacent area or cause injury to any property or business therein. And I know some of these are also in the statute. I don't know, Ryan, if you know off the top of your head, if that's statutory or is that just ordinance?
I pulled ordinance.
Okay. So it is in the ordinance, which is passed by the commissioners. And I think Dr. Bothwell's point is that would be very difficult for the board to find that because they just don't have a crystal ball and can't foresee into the future whether that's going to be the case. So I think what he's suggesting is potentially, does that need to be slightly altered, maybe to will not substantially injure or adversely affect? I don't know what the language, that's really up for you guys to decide, and then ultimately the commissioners to decide. But, so what happens then is, if someone appeals our order, we have these findings of facts, this is the first thing the court's gonna go to. They're gonna look at this and say, is there substantial evidence presented at the hearing where the request is made to prove each one of these points? And for B, it might very well be difficult to prove that, so it theoretically could get done in court, even though we have said it. So I think that's what he's referring to, if that puts it maybe a little more explanation into what he's saying. So I do think it's a valid point. As it's written, it might be very difficult for any findings of fact to currently, for a CAFO specifically, to withstand any type of an appeal someone might bring going into court.
So, what's your recommendation?
So I think probably, at least on this specific one, I need to verify whether that's statutory. If it's statutory, we're not gonna get it changed. We're not gonna get the legislature to change it. If it's just ordinance, then maybe we come back and have a discussion on what language, what appropriate language would be, and then take a vote on that. And if it changes what's in place, if a majority feel, then certainly that recommendation would need to be made to the commissioners to alter the area-wide zoning ordinance.
Okay. So for the commission's information, we do have rules and procedures that we're following, or we currently have. They're active. They're the older ones. This is a revised version that we are working to approve. So we'll wait for Mr. Glickfield and Ryan to draw some consensus on how we need to move with that. But please review what we've got to this point, and we will entertain it, seeing if we can move forward on some of this in anticipation of receiving feedback on the other.
If I could, there's another issue that I think needs to be looked at as well. We found that, as far as we understood at the time, there are only 2 areas that this commission actually has authority in. For most other things, we make a recommendation to the commission. But in the area of a CAFO and subdivisions, we have final say. That's what we have been told. Again, back in the CAFO time, which I happened to be in your seat at the time, Randy, we heard the official hearing for the first time on behalf of the petitioner wanting CAFO. It is supposed to be a 2-step process. It's not something that you hear and discuss and approve or deny that night. It needs to go to a second hearing. Okay? Our options for moving that to a second hearing is, one, you can accept it just the way it is and it's over with. You can deny it. It's so outlandish, you just deny it. Or you can conditionally approve it and then hear it at a second hearing. There are no other options. There is no option, which I have suggested needs to be added, that we move to a second hearing without prejudice.
Is that Indiana code that we?
I don't know. If it is or it didn't, it needs to be changed. Otherwise, you're going to get sued, which we did.
Well, again, it's on the list, next comp plan, and then getting through this book, because we've got this out there.
We've got things that have to be looked at before we can
Okay,
go
so
anywhere.
for the sake of time, please review what we have now, and we will revisit to see if we can approve some of this to move forward, to get a little closer to a final product. Do I need a motion for that?
Yeah, it's on the agenda. I would just maybe have a motion to review the rules of procedure and table it until everyone's had a chance to get up to speed on it, whether it be the next meeting or the meeting after that.
Entertaining motions?
Could I ask something else be added to that? We've had this discussion over rules of procedure now for a matter of years. I think Ryan probably was working on it for almost 3 years now. And I know the committee that I was assigned to has been working on it and have a report ready to be made 2 years ago. So we worked on it for a year prior to that. And at this point in time, especially with our new people, I don't think anybody knows what the rules and regulations are that are currently in effect. Could we please get that out? Make a copy of what is our current rules and regulations and get that out for everybody so that you can review from, this is where we are, this is where some people suggest that we go, and there is another group of people who was officially appointed, and they came up with changes to be made. So there's more to it than just looking at this.
Some of us have a 3-ring binder that has the area-wide zoning ordinance and the rules and procedures in it. I'm not sure what occurred with the in-service of the new folks.
Generally, normally I'd hand out the APC basics, usually APC rules procedure.
When I joined, I received an electronic copy of several pieces, including the rules and procedures.
Okay.
And a link to various resources, minutes to the next meeting. So I don't know if I got the area-wide ordinance, but I got several pieces, and I do know that I reviewed the rules of procedures before I came to my first meeting.
So if you find that you don't have one, please let Ryan know, and we'll see that you get one.
I think that needs to be part of our discussion as we go forward.
Okay? So we still need a motion.
So moved.
Motion from Mr. Bothwell. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. And are you okay, Nicole, with as far as explaining what that motion was for.
Review the rules of procedures and to be tabled.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Bothwell.
Yep.
Caudell.
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Pearson.
Yes.
Poland.
Yes.
Solts.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Todd.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Okay, next item, solar timeline. I don't want to be here till 9 o'clock, so I guess a little background is I've spent a considerable amount of time trying to develop an understanding of how our solar ordinance originated from to where we're at now. And you were given a timeline that Ryan had put together at the last meeting, and I believe you have a fresh copy of it as well this time. Before I get on a deal with the research that I've done, and I will admit that I had the opportunity to review the request of the Freedom of Information Act that was requested that Ryan had put together, so I've had the opportunity to review that. I've spent several hours trying to put the pieces of this puzzle together, but before I take off on that, I want to offer the commission members the opportunity to ask any questions that they may have in regard to the timeline document that you received at the last meeting and at this one.
With the work that you've done, Randy, I would defer to you to talk with us about what your findings are.
Okay?
You apparently have done a lot more work with this than perhaps any of us. So maybe
Okay.
you could enlighten us.
Well, with that being said, Ryan, I'm going to assume that you'll be the one who can respond to most of the questions that I might send out here.
I
Okay?
will do my darndest.
I'm sorry?
I will do my darndest.
Okay. So I asked some questions in regard to some past APC members and BZA members who might have been associated with the origin of this, since I was not. And correct me, Ryan, it's my understanding that when this was first brought to the APC and the BZA, it was mentioned that the need for solar ordinance was because we had a record number of solar installations, and I'm assuming that that would have been in Grant County, which would have been the Oak Hill School, the Madison Grant School, the I&M facility there on, I believe that is Lincoln Boulevard, and the Gas City solar developments. And I believe it was mentioned that the Gas City one had actually caught fire, so there was a tremendous need for us to have some regulation in regard to the solar developments that we had.
I don't think it was Gas City that caught fire. I think it was AEP that caught fire,
Okay,
I believe.
okay. So you agree that that was probably initial motivation for us to move towards a solar ordinance?
Yeah, well, we had AEP caught fire. And from what I've been told, the firemen basically stood at the gate and didn't know what to do. We also had over in Oak Hill, and that one, they dug into a field tile and had a hole. Kenny Kate says they had a hole the size of a Volkswagen. Obviously, all four of those miners that went in, we had zero regulation on them. We had no kind of ordinance whatsoever.
And Gas Cities would be controlled by Gas City, correct?
Now, Gas City went through our BZA, and then as soon as we approved it, got annexed into Gas City.
Okay. Okay, so the next thing I would ask is, to your knowledge, when was your first introduction to the potential of solar development in Grant County?
It was Tom Schroeder had tried to set a meeting with me for probably a couple of months. When I finally did meet with him, it was the second week of June. We met up at the office, and that's when he told me that what Invenergy was looking to do solar in Grant County.
So he
This
would have
was
reached
June
out
of
to,
what year?
2021.
so he'd have reached out to you in March of 2021 based on,
He emailed me and I was busy, and emailed me and I was busy, and emailed me and I was busy.
okay, because you were new to the job, correct?
Yeah, March
Okay.
1st, 2021, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was both director and building inspector at the same
Okay.
time.
So Tom Schroeder would have been the marketing representative for Invenergy?
Yes,
And I'm assuming that his interest in solar in Grant County would have been to continue through the Matthews area on that high voltage grid line. Did he express that to you?
it was just an introduction. It was, here's who we are, here's what we're hoping to do, we're looking to lease land.
Okay.
And from that generated the first meeting with the solar committee.
Okay.
At the end of June.
Okay, Solar Committee, that's my next question. Can you help us to understand how the origin of that Solar Committee came together? Who decided membership?
It was probably me. I seem to have to facilitate a lot of stuff, but I mean, I think I put it together trying to go for one council member, one commissioner, economic development, attorney. Well, you can see, I mean, it started a discussion of, because what they were doing originally was the same thing, Tom coming in and talking to them about the same stuff he talked to me about. Hey, here's what we're interested in doing. So that's when it pretty much came about that, hey, they're in Grant County, they're looking to lease land, and right now we have no ordinance.
So you're telling me at that time, Tom Schroeder didn't tell you that he already had land leased in Grant County?
Not to my knowledge. It was kind of, he could have. I mean, he might have, I don't know. I mean, you're talking.
Okay. Okay. So what criteria did you use in order to make the composition of that committee? Was there any guidelines that you might have followed as best recommendation from ordinance development or anything that?
Well, I think between me and Justin, because Justin had some stuff to do with it too, but, I mean, it was again, just trying to bring a little bit of this, a little bit of this, those that would be involved into it, just to have an introductory meeting on solar. I mean, to this point, as far as, I mean, they might have introduced themselves to the commissioners prior or whatever, but to this point, I don't believe we'd actually sat down and had any kind of conversation on solar.
Did you know Joe Certain, the lawyer on that committee, was being hired by a solar company at that time?
No. Yeah, he wasn't one of my invites.
So when did you become knowledgeable that Joe Certain on that committee had been hired by a solar company?
To be honest with you, I didn't know who Joe Certain was
Okay.
originally. But I mean, we were sitting at a big table, and at this time, I'm still new, so half of these people I barely know as is at that time.
So when Joe Certain stood up before the Solar Summit and introduced himself as representing, I don't know whether it's Apex or whatever, did anybody ever question him at that point?
But, I mean, I don't know, because I think David at one point represented someone, so,
But David wasn't on the solar committee.
right.
Okay.
So again, the other thing to remember at the time of the solar committee, when it first got together, the state had a mandatory solar ordinance get all the way through to the end and failed at the end for time or whatever. So we knew that was done and that the state was looking back into it, or going to be
Senate Bill
looking back.
411 to be decided in July of 2022.
Right.
Okay. Did the APC approve you and Chuck to represent them on this solar committee? Was there any action taken by the APC for you guys to be designated as the representatives to the APC?
No. I mean, it was a matter of me being the building official. I was going to be a part of it. Chuck was the president, so. And at this time, I mean, at this time, we're talking about needing an ordinance. But we're not talking about writing an ordinance.
Well, the only concern I have with that is Indiana Code 36-7-4-602. Number 1 says the Plan Commission may initiate their proposal under the advisory planning law or the area planning law. Any participating legislative body also may initiate the proposal and require the Planning Commission to prepare it. You're familiar with that code?
So we had a couple of legislative bodies in there.
Okay. Well, and that's the only reason that I asked if the APC actually approved for you and Chuck to serve as the commission if we were going to fall under that, because I'm assuming that, well, at some point, the commissioners kind of took control of it because they took control of the Solar Summit.
Well, even down to the Solar Summit, there was a question of, is the Area Plan Commission publishing it, or is the commissioners publishing it? So, I mean, we still didn't know, I mean, it become the commissioners, but again, we were both involved. And I wasn't sure if we were supposed to publish for their.
Well, I think Mark sent an email out saying that that the commissioners, it was a commissioner special session or special meeting.
Right.
Is that the summer that we're talking about?
Right.
Okay. You guys got any questions up to this point?
I'm just wondering about the Joe Certain thing, trying to clear that up. You appointed the committee, and yet when the committee met.
No, I didn't appoint. I tried to gather people, is all I.
Okay, you
Joe
gathered
Certain I
people,
did not
and then
know.
other people, where did he come from? Who appointed, who took the initiative to appoint someone above and beyond the group that you had assembled?
I mean, this wasn't me assembling. This was Tom coming in to talk to Justin. Justin got Mark. Justin got Shane. I got pulled into it. And then I said, well, how about, shouldn't we have someone from this? Shouldn't we have someone from this? I was in the first meeting, and Chuck wasn't in the first meeting. That's after the first meeting, I said, well, we need to bring Chuck into this.
So it's Mr. Sadoff then that actually.
And this here, again,
Put
is just
people
a introduction, because we, I mean,
What was
literally.
his position at that time, Ryan?
Justin's?
Yeah.
He's still administrator of the commissioners.
He was the
HR.
county administrator at that
Yeah.
time? No, he wasn't. He had different titles.
I don't know.
I don't know. When they hired him, I still don't know for sure what Justin is, but they hired Justin, and I think the official title to begin with was human resources or something.
Right,
And then later, long after, this process had been set up, they gave him additional authority or some sort. So I'm just wondering who gave him the authority to put a committee together to do this kind of thing without consulting this body for one, and the BZA, and even the public. For something that was as important as this, I would have thought that we would have wanted, like with the comprehensive plan that we're working with, I would have thought that we would like to have had representatives of a number of different stakeholders, if you will, in the county, rather than a select group that didn't represent necessarily the interest of the whole thing. Anyways, Justin that did this, right?
Yeah,
And Justin works for the commissioners.
So we
that
had
correct?
this meeting, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We had this meeting June 28th. Coming from that, I mean, it was basically, we need to write a solar ordinance. And from there, I'm thinking, okay, sitting with the people sitting here, who's writing this thing?
Did you feel like this Indiana code was applied by the legislatures appointing the planning commission to write this ordinance?
I don't know, to me, it was the, well, again, as building official, if you get into the area-wide zoning ordinance, it's for me to amend the comprehensive plan and the text amendments, and so if someone was going to write it, there's a good chance it was going to be me.
Clayton, you got something?
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be an implication of impropriety in the generation of this committee, but the fact that it went through 7 drafts shows that it wasn't binding. There's no legislation passed. And Randy, by voting for you as APC president, I'm voting for you to represent the APC. And so if you are present somewhere between APC meetings, the APC has been represented. And if elected officials from the various Grant County offices are present, including the president of the APC, I think it seems unfair to say that no one was properly represented. I suppose I would not consider that to be applicable. I would consider the APC and every body, not everybody, every human, but every body that had a representative present at this non-binding committee to be fairly represented.
Well, it ended up being rather binding. I want to assure you, as I sit here, I will not take the responsibility of representing this commission without this commission's approval and authority for me to do so. I think that should, because I'm dealing with transparency and, this commission is built on the fact that it's to represent all the areas in Grant County, and something as significant as this, as Dr. Bothwell shared, I think it would be very important that this commission takes a significant role in something that has taken place.
I appreciate that, but I watched videos. There was a concern. There's a question about Mr. Maynard acting between boards. That's been a long-standing discussion of this board, is the role of the president, and he has the authority to contract on behalf of and represent the APC between meetings. It seems to me that the draft was emailed to the APC on July 20th, which it sounds like it's fairly shortly after the meeting. I suppose I just failed to see how the APC was not involved. And if anything, as you say, as the president, if something feels beyond your purview, more than anyone, I would lay it at the hands of the APC president if the APC was not sufficiently notified. I would not say the issue was in the drafting of the committee by the fact that the APC president and president of all these other elected bodies are present.
Well, to help you with that, Clayton, there's a perception out there that this ordinance strongly favors solar companies more so than having the input from the Grant County citizens on it. And, we'll get, I
don't see that at this point.
Okay, because the next concern I have is based on some tallies that I done. There were 14 interactions with solar companies from June 28th to the August 4th, because I tried to follow the meetings, right, and I wasn't able to pick up where you had shared in the September meeting, and I believe there's an October meeting. Now, when you did say in the timeline that you had spent 10 minutes, I think that, in my opinion, based on my review, that was the first real effort made to bring the Area Planning Commission up to where the status of the ordinance was, because you were moving towards the solar summit at that time.
Well, we spoke about it in the August meeting, also in the email, and I have to go through here and find it because this goes in line. But there's also a complete column in here on news from the office that was sent out to the Area Plan Commission prior to the meeting, talking about the Area Plan Commission reviewing and looking at the ordinance, becoming aware of it, noting that, this was going to be in our wheelhouse. But again, obviously it's at one of 10,000 pages, but.
I'm probably fresher with it than you are at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
But if I can find the one.
But back to that,
Okay,
I
yeah.
truly am concerned that there were that many interactions with solar companies through the development of the first draft, and I think it even led up to draft 3, because there were 2 additional drafts made before draft 4, which went to the solar summit. Is that correct? Was draft 4 what was?
Draft 3 went to the solar summit. Coming from the solar summit was draft 4 presented to APC in November 2020.
So what transpired the 2 drafts? Because I didn't find that anywhere where that communication was made with either APC or in any of the emails. What took place from draft 1 to draft 3?
Well, at that point, it was still within the solar. Remember, draft one was put together in 2 weeks. It was to get something on paper. It was based off of, I read several ordinances, I picked 5, I put something together with those 5 to get something on paper. With that, if you've seen my ordinances on the big screen, here's the ordinance and here's 100 questions within it. That I basically put together and said, okay, start answering questions.
Now, is that the 3 pages of questions that you referenced in the timeline?
Which one?
You said you put together 3 pages of questions.
You got to get me to where I'm at here.
Oh,
I mean, I can read them to you if you know where they're at.
okay.
Draft 1,
You don't remember putting together 3 pages of questions? Okay, August 30th, who generated 3 pages of solar questions? Where did they come from? What were the results? And who responded to the questions? Because I don't think there were any results of those questions that were found. August 30th.
email in.
And I'll be honest with you, the most struggling thing that I think really got me wanting to look into this deeper is when there were several interactions with the solar companies, like they were feeding on us like vultures.
Well, I think once the first company came in and introduced themselves is when word got out, because that's basically, we had Gen X come in, Apex come in, Sun Funded come in for both the universities. Now granted, everything, Madison County was going, Delaware County was going, they had just got their ordinance done. Howard County had just finished theirs, so, I had talked to Brad Newman in Madison County and MARTA. I talked to John over in Jay County, Jay County, and we go to class with Randolph County. So, a lot of them had just done their ordinance, and August 30th. I need to have you looking this stuff up. MARTA in Delaware County, she had gathered a lot of information from other counties that she sent to me that I expounded on and I've sent on to other counties that have called.
What were you doing with the information that the solar companies were providing to you? I know on several.
They gave us stuff like, we had, I need August 30th, so I can talk and you can.
I just want you to recall, for the sake of time, I just want you to respond to recall here, unless you're not comfortable with that.
Well, I should be pretty good, but I won't be exact.
Sure.
That's a lot of stuff to remember.
I know. I spent a lot of time looking over, Ryan. Yeah.
So what was your question again? Sorry.
The 3 pages of solar questions.
And that was coming off of draft 3 was emailed out to the solar committee. 3 pages of solar ordinance questions was included. Director Mullen noted that he had a discussion with the grant County Assessor Rhonda Wiley. Rhonda noted little effects. So there should be a whole,
Here's your August 30th email.
so this one's gonna be with Grant County Solar Draft 3.
I mean, somewhere I saw a document that had some red answers to some questions, but I don't know where those,
It's a draft.
it was very disjointed because it wasn't in chronological order for a person to be able to follow based on what Dallas received. And maybe you're starting
I
with the same-
tried, we tried to copy this,
Okay,
I mean, we tried to copy it page for page.
Here you go. Found it. Here it is. It's right before that. Here's the email. Here's the pages.
All right, sent out to the solar committee. Good afternoon, went back through the solar ordinance and tried to clean up the numbering and some language. I have included a separate sheet of questions that I still have. Feedback would be appreciated. Again, asking if we are ready for another meeting amongst ourselves or for the summit meeting to work towards final draft. Also had a good conversation with Rhonda Wiley over property values. There is not much concern there, as the 4 solar farms we currently have little effect on land values. Drops in property value throughout farmland in Grant County is uniform throughout Grant County and not just around solar. She also informed me that she just went to an assessors meeting in Indianapolis where one of the topics was how to assess solar farms. I don't mean to push, but like everyone, I have 20 plates spinning. Please try, plus trying to help Nicole get everything ready and moving for our demolition season. You've got 3 pages that include the highlights or cost for applications, revisions to development plan, approval process, yes or no questions to some of the site and landscape requirements, liability insurance, economic development, and again, development plan approval process.
so you think that the 3 pages of questions originated from that?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, in regard to Wiley's response to property values, was she the assessor here?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm assuming that she was making that analysis from the current solar installations that we have in Grant County.
Yes, and if you go in here, she's in here again farther in, where we've talked again, and she's given me even more information.
Okay. But common sense says there's really not a similarity between thousands of acres of industrial solar and farm ground and the very unique installations of the solar that we had in Grant County at that time.
Well, and again, remember, I'm just asking the question.
Okay.
I'm just, hey, Rhonda,
Okay.
what have you seen? Same thing with Jim McWhirter, as far as talking to him about, hey, what might we do with permitting and application fees? And so,
Because what I'm hoping is that where some of that property value information came from, Trina provided some to you, and,
this is Rhonda.
huh?
This was from Rhonda.
But I'm saying, on December 6th, there's an email that says that Trina from Gen X emailed links related to property values in regard to solar developments.
But what was the date again?
December 6th. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything coming from a solar company that wasn't going to be advantageous to that solar company to send that to you.
Yeah,
I hope
it's
that
their
that
standard frequently asked question handout.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that got handed out at numerous meetings.
What's the time? I don't want, okay. Okay, on November 14th, 20th, and 21st, and I'm skipping around here for the sake of time, it appears that there was a PowerPoint presentation that was going to be shown. I'm not sure where it was going to be shown, but Ed Hartman had suggested some things on it, and the email stated that from Justin that those suggestions were rejected. Do you have any recollection of that?
not from Justin, from Chuck said to proceed with. Ed Hartman sent his own presentation and agenda for the meeting back to Chuck Breedy and Director Milan. After discussion, it was decided to follow the original plan.
Okay. No recall as to what those suggestions that Ed might have made were?
I mean, I'm sure I still got it.
Okay.
Again, I think the plan was to, for November 14th. Okay, so this would have been our first presentation to the APC. So I think what we were thinking, we had the PowerPoint together to where I could come out and talk about how we got here. And then it would be opened up from there to discuss. Ed might have moved some slides around or something.
Okay. Was that taped?
Yeah.
Was that recorded?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. November 18th, it appears that there was being some questions about the permitting fees for application and permitting for small solar farms. And I believe you reached out to Trina for that?
Yes. Well, I sent that, not just to Trina, I sent that to almost all the solar companies. That is asking if, okay, so solar company comes in, they hand us $10,000 application fee. With that $10,000, we are looking for at engineering studies or whatever is needed for the application fee. With the permitting fees coming in, we're charging $1,000 per megawatt. So let's say we've got 150 megawatt farm coming in, that's $150,000. Obviously, a farm that big is going to be too big for us to do all of it. So this question to them was, are there companies, or what are some of the companies out there that would actually come in and do some of the inspecting, some of the engineering, that would do some of the monitoring, and with that, how much would that cost?
Okay. So in the solar summit, one of the complaints the solar companies had was that the fees were too high. Can we assume that this is not related to that?
No, this is completely, well, we just had our scoring committee for the comp plan. Two of the companies that we had in that scoring committee are companies that we could hire for a solar company. They've got every department covered. So that's what I was wanting to find out, if we hire them, what is the cost? Because we're talking again, we've had it's too much, it's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, on a 150 megawatt farm, if we hire your company, are they going to charge us $110,000? Are they going to charge us $50,000? We're getting $150,000 through the permitting fees. But what would a general cost to be to hire your company to come in and do this stuff for us?
So you were asking solar companies based on any experiences that they may have had with that?
Or any companies out there that they have worked with.
Okay.
That we could talk to.
Okay.
Because again, this is exploring. I'm
You guys
trying
got
to
any
prepare for
questions?
someone to show up.
Anybody got any, I don't want to control everything here. I can bring closure to this, I think. Yes.
Just to clarify or summarize for my benefit, and again, as Dr. Bothwell's been saying, to kind of catch new people up to speed, is it fair to say the intention of this timeline and your questions is to see if solar companies unfairly prejudiced the commissioners towards the ordinance that was passed? Is that the goal of this? Is that?
No, I don't think there's a goal here related to that. I think you see this group of people, I think this group of people has some serious concerns about how this ordinance is going to impact them. And I think they deserve an understanding of how this this ordinance originated, because I'm going, maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but I think that this commission will have the opportunity to make some amendments to the ordinance, and I hope that we have the opportunity to do that, and I hope that we can do that. And I think, having an understanding of where the concerns of these folks are will benefit us as the commission in making ordinance that, or making amendments that would be better for all of us. Now, to answer your question, do I think that the Solars Company had tremendous influence on this ordinance? I absolutely do. And I think there's evidence to support that, to be honest with you. Because we can,
I'm not challenging that.
okay,
I'm,
we can jump into this, and this is a document that I would highly recommend that you review. And Ryan, you're aware of this document, and I would hope that in the ordinance development process that you went through, that this would have been a guide for you. Was it?
Again, we're trying to put something together to present to the APC. So, I mean, that's, the solar committee was trying to put something together. And again, like Clayton said, and it shows in here. I mean, we sent draft one the day, 2 days after it was done. We talked about it at the beginning of August. It was in emails for news. Or the August meeting. We talked about it in the September meeting. In the meantime, I'm sending emails, which are all in here. It talked September meeting prior to. Dr. Bothwell, myself, and Kyle had almost a 10-15 minute conversation on solar. Coming in November, we talked about possibly a moratorium before it got, I mean, we had that conversation. We went into the commissioners' meeting in the middle of October to be presented to the APC at the beginning of November. And then, then we're back into, we have a special session on solar in the middle of November. We have December meeting, special session in the middle of December. Then we go to the January meeting. Then we have the educational workshop in June. So, again, this was all to get something to present to the Area Plan Commission. The idea was to hand it to the Area Plan Commission, almost completed, and let you guys do with what you would.
Which I think there was an attempt for that to happen. I do believe that in drafts 5 and 6, not as a commission member, but as a, concerned taxpaying citizen, that I was I participated in that by, viewing it. And I do believe that there was a very strong effort on the APC's part to recognize the concerns of the people. And I believe that even though draft 7 appears to be somewhat controversy based on the way that it was presented, I do believe that it better represented the concerns of the people than what the current legal adopted ordinance does. And that's why I'm truly hoping, for the opportunity to go into the amendment process at some point so that we can try and address some of those concerns.
Well, I mean, again, I would urge you, as we've talked up in the office, I would urge you to start moving towards that point, because with each day, the moratorium gets shorter.
thank you for explaining, Randy.
Okay. Do I have concerns that this ordinance was influenced by solar companies? I do. I truly do, and I think that that's a pretty common feeling out there, is the reason that we've had, the interaction from the Grant County citizens that we have had.
And again, but as you've seen it here, I mean, it is based off of 32 counties. I got 32 counties up here. I mean, by the time we got to draft 4, I had 32 counties. I talked to numerous directors. I'm going to say I didn't talk to solar. With solar, it was at all our meetings. It's hard not to.
There was one email that created some question. This was Mark, Tim, and Charity on February 2nd, 2022. There was some significant news today from PJM Interconnection, which is the grid operator AEP feeds into. This could impact the developers you are currently working with, especially if they aren't already in the queue. And I know that Trina responded to Tim by saying that just between us, that should not impact our development. So do you have knowledge of what that significant information was that?
If I'm not mistaken, that would be that they put a two-year hold on all additional projects going into queue.
And I think that's correct, because I think that email also said that those that were further up the line would be honored first.
Right, and it would shake out all the pretenders.
Sure, sure, and I think they were happy that they were in the queue at Van Buren and Matthews.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Overlay district, that seems to be a concern that has come up in discussions. And you, Tamara from Purdue, asked you about the overlay district, why it was added to the Grant County ordinance.
Now, Tamara is the one who surveyed the entire state on their wind and solar. She has got the snapshot, which I use quite a bit, because it actually takes us straight to wind and solar. Okay, and she's got the reports. And as you can see on there, at the time, one of the ways was the overlay district.
It was 5 out of 25 for solar, where special exception, which I'm assuming would be controlled by the Board of Zoning Appeals, was at 23 out of 25.
Right.
So there had to be something significant about the overlay that made us not fall out of the middle category that we were trying to develop our ordinance on, and go towards something that wasn't as popular as what other counties were doing. So,
Well, I mean, as you can see, you can read in there, in the state of Indiana, there's 15 different order of approvals. So right now, the trending way, because what you have got is from, I believe, 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, because she didn't do it this year. I just asked her if they had a new snapshot.
so
But
can you share with us what the benefit or of the overlay would be, for the sake of, the folks here? Why did we shift to overlay from special exception?
The overlay district allows us to take, when we get a development, they're going to give us maximum boundaries. It allows us to overlay those boundaries, it lets us take each development on a case-by-case basis. So, I mean, that was the whole purpose of doing it, was so that we could do it on a case-by-case basis.
Does overlay take the power away from the BZA and give it solely to the commissioners?
BZA will always be in charge of variances, period.
So the overlay is a variance?
If there are any variances, it overlays the district with the solar ordinance. So the base ordinance is still there, but it puts the solar ordinance in effect within the maximum extent boundaries. The BZA loses no power. If that development comes in and they've got 13 pages of variances, those 13 pages go through the BZA.
Special exception.
Ed, would you like, Ed, I'm going to give you the opportunity to share. I think you have a pretty good understanding of this.
Ed Hartman, Fairmount, Indiana. Special exception determines if there would even be a solar farm by the Board of Zoning Appeals. That's taken away with the overlay district. The overlay district is a unique way of looking at this. The overlay district is normally used to protect a specific area, like a historical district would make a good place for an overlay district, so that the commissioners can control the uses, and what is done in an overlay district. Another good example of an overlay district would be where your town's wellheads are. If you want to protect your drinking water, you would put an overlay district on it so that the commissioners could be sure that nothing goes on in that area that might pollute the town or the city's drinking water. That's what the overlay district is normally for. That's what it was developed for. This is a unique application to make an overlay district on top of solar farms spread all over the place. It's not like setting aside one area where you've decided, like, there's a large development we want to bring in, like an industrial park or something like that, and it's set aside. You know, that would be a good way to go at solar if you really felt you wanted to do that. You would set aside a large area, and then you would help attain the land and make that happen. Not just spread it all over the county following the electric lines and let the solar companies decide where everything will go based on who they can talk into signing a lease. That's why the maps of where these solar farms are going look like they do. You won't be able to drive out through the country without coming across a solar farm practically, the way these things are spread out. It's really an odd process.
So am I hearing you say that with the overlay district, the Board of Zoning Appeals won't have
Really,
anything?
no authority. I mean, variances, if the BZA turned every one of them down, all that would mean would be the solar company had to build according to the regulations.
The regulations of the ordinance?
Yes,
Okay.
or any other building codes or ordinances that apply in the area-wide zoning ordinance. But anything that applied, you know, they would have to follow that.
But the overlay district falls under the jurisdiction of the commissioners?
Correct.
Okay. So Ryan, why did we do that? Because this BZA thing was really heavy during the discussions, you know that.
Again, going back to the email you're talking about, you know, Tamara was questioning, she wanted to know more about why we went with the overlay district, because that is the trend in the state.
That's a trend in the state, okay. But we know that at the Solar Summit, and we know that Joe Certain has sent several emails taking the BZA out of the process.
At the Solar Summit, and even when it was first introduced, we were still trying to figure out order of approval. The very first draft that you guys, not very first, when it was officially presented to the Area Plan Commission, it was presented with two different orders of approval for you guys to start working.
And it was popular, if I recall, November 14th meeting, that when you asked the APC and the BZA members if they thought that it should be by spatial exception, they were pretty much in agreement that it should be by spatial exception. I know Jerry was worried about Van Buren, and Chuck was worried about Sweetser, but for the most part, they felt that it should be BZA approved, and I know that at the Solar Summit, solar companies were asking that.
You're talking November 14th.
Whenever you had that joint APC BZA.
So we have to be careful when we say that the APC wanted something. If you remember correctly, 4 of 13 members of the APC were there.
That's correct.
So I mean, wasn't the APC.
So why do you think that the BZA, that the solar companies at the Solar Summit requested that the BZA not be part of the approval process? And why would Joe Certain make a point 2 or 3 times to request to the commissioners that the BZA be removed from the approval process?
Well, the point about the BZA is because the BZA by law is not a part.
Okay.
I mean, that's not, the BZA by law is not a part of any type of text amendment, ordinance. They are special exceptions, variances, and appeals.
Okay.
That is their bailiwick.
Questions, commission members? Sorry to take your time. I think this is important to the people sitting around here that this information, at least they have a better understanding of how we got where we were or where we are.
Sorry, Randy, me again.
Yes.
Again, just so I understand, when you put an overlay district over the solar overlay, do all the previous ordinances and zoning still apply that were there, and this just adds additional? Or
Yes,
does
the
it
base-
replace?
Base zoning stays.
So if there was a rule about 30 feet for a fence or structure height or anything like that, that wouldn't have been taken away by the solar,
No.
by the overlay. This just adds additional regulation.
Anyone else have anything in regard to the timeline? Okay. Sharina, would I put you on the spot if I ask you a couple questions?
I can try to answer.
I'm sorry?
I can try to answer, yeah.
Okay. If this commission made a motion and took a vote for Gen X to file their leases, would that encourage you to do that?
Our lease memos are recorded with the county.
Okay. They are currently. All
It's our
leased land
practice.
is recorded with the.
Yes, it's our
Okay,
practice.
Okay. Thank you for doing that. Secondly, I've been made aware that, and this is, I don't know how appropriate this is going to be, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm a straight-up guy. There's been some mentioning of wanting to make deals with landowners out in the Van Buren area by Gen X.
What do you mean by make deals?
Oh, maybe quiet them down a little bit, maybe extend the setback a little further in order to give them some comfort over what the ordinance says.
We do work with neighbors to try to accommodate. Each situation's unique. Each neighbor is unique. So yes, we do enjoy having conversations with the neighbors, understanding their sensitivities and seeing, how we can accommodate on an individual basis, on a community basis, countywide.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what provisions does your solar company do in the event that it would appear that somebody's life is going to change drastically with the solar development around them? Would you initiate the consideration of a change, or would you expect them to do that?
We do tremendous neighbor outreach at various stages of the project.
Okay. Thank you.
I would expect us to be there too, though.
I'm sorry?
Like we've talked about, during the development stage, if we see someone getting surrounded on three sides, that falls on us too.
So the ordinance gives us the ability to make some changes in the event that there is somebody on
It
three
gives us the
sides?
opportunity to bring it about, and if changes need to be made, the commissioners, through economic development, can make those changes if needed.
Okay.
But again, if someone's gonna get surrounded, that falls on us.
On who?
It falls on me or anyone else looking at the development.
Okay.
Like I told you, we're gonna have a big old map sitting on my wall, and you and me's gonna
Okay.
over it with a magnifying glass.
Do we agree that the development plan is the sole responsibility of the Area Planning Commission? If that's something that needs to be changed in the ordinance?
It's given. If you look at the planned unit development, it allows the legislative body to give secondary approval to the Area Planning Commission. It is in the 1500s. 36-7-4, 1500s is your PUD development, in which the legislative body can give secondary approval to the Area Plan Commission, and that's the way it's set up.
How do you read that, David?
I'd have to look at it again.
Okay, because everything I've read says, sole responsibility development plan, area plan.
Again, in the planned unit development, it gives that authority to the legislative body, but does allow them to have secondary approval, which is what has been given.
Could you look into that for me, David?
What was that code site again?
It's just the 1500 series of local government. 36-7-4-1500.
Just give it to me and I will.
Okay. All right, you guys had enough of this. Let's do some public input. Please state your name, sign the.
Good evening. My name is Dallas Street. I live outside of Van Buren. Mr. President, Commissioner Stewart, Mr. Blickfield, members of the APC. Mr. President, if it's okay with you, I'd like to hand out some documents to each member of your board. It's a short packet, but something I think everyone needs to get their hands on. Everyone else in attendance, if you want this digitally, please let me know. I have it and can send it to you. Let me pass these out. I'll go over just briefly what I have here. Can everybody hear me? I don't want to take up too much time. So a couple months ago, I made a request for the executive director of the area plan under the Access to Public Records Act in the state of Indiana. It's very similar to a FOIA request at the federal level. I asked for emails between the executive director and the commissioners, and the executive director and any solar companies from the years 2021 to the end of 2023. What I've just handed you all is some interesting points that stuck out to me. You'll see on the first page is the executive director job description as it will be posted online if the position were to be filled. I posted that so you can go along and reference it while you look through this packet. There are 20 points I've listed. Each number coincides with the circle number at the top of a page. I'm just going to highlight a few. Earlier, Mr. Malott was pretty straightforward when he said that a rep from Invenergy reached out to him in March. And then again in June, Mr. Malott confirmed a meeting with this representative. I want to fast forward. Again, Mr. Malott, it was noted, these documents were not in chronological order, so APC members, you'll have to forgive me. I did the best I could. If you really want it in chronological order, I can rearrange some things and remake it and bring it back next month. But I'm hoping what I presented you will kind of get my point across. If you look at number 5, there is evidence that Invenergy had a direct role in the creation of the ordinance. There was direct feedback on draft 3. I included that direct feedback in the packet that I gave you. They did it on Microsoft Word and added specific comments in areas of the ordinance. I have not been able to confirm whether those were applied or not. Number 6, I think, Mr. Malott, you kind of alluded to this earlier when you said that you were reaching out to solar companies to ask their feedback on solar or permit fees. That just doesn't make sense to me why we're asking the companies that we're bringing to the county to provide us funding for a $110 million jail, as quoted by Steve Wright, why we're asking them about the fees they would or would not like to pay. So that kind of stuck out and kind of goes in line with the conversation that we've had this evening. Number 7 kind of sticks out a little bit as well. On 05 January 2022, Director Malott told Kyle Persinger in an email that he will be doing the ordinance alone. This is where I would like to reference the job description, because nowhere in that job description did I find where the executive director should be drafting ordinances, let alone drafting them alone. But it's there in the email, date and time stamped for you to see. Number 9, this one kind of hit me personally, so I put it in there because it's incredibly unprofessional. Director Malott is mocking Ed Hartman of the BZA and asked when his actions become overstepping. If you'll look at that email, you'll see that Ed Hartman was simply trying to point some things out for the citizens of the county with this ordinance and trying to keep this ordinance on track the way it was, because I think Mr. Hartman saw the writing on the wall and saw that this ordinance was being drafted with the assistance and to the betterment of the solar companies trying to come into the county. So the unprofessionalism there just kind of stuck out to me and showed me what the mission was all about. On the back page, you'll see number 15. On 30 August 2021, Mr. Malott included Trina Rudebush of GeneX in the building of the ordinance and is taking references from her in how to build the ordinance. So that's 2 companies, Invenergy and GeneX. Trina has been involved in this drafting of the solar ordinance from 2021 probably until now. Apex Energy was also involved. Number 16, here you'll see on 23 June of 2022, there's more evidence of Director Malott allowing Trina Rudebush to coach him through the ordinance process with resources that are pro-solar. And then finally, the last thing I want to highlight is number 19. This is where Apex Energy comes into play. He's literally taking advice from Apex Energy on how to write the ordinance. So those are just a few things I want to point out that stuck out some to me. There's some information in there about the commissioners, Commissioner Wright specifically, but I'll address that at a commissioners meeting. It just kind of adds further evidence into what we've all been trying to say for the last couple of months. I received 1,800 pages in this request, and these are the 20 things that stuck out the most to me. Again, if you want access to these, it's in a Google folder. I can give you the link. I'll be in the back of the room before we leave here. I've walked away from this document request with the full understanding that this ordinance was drafted mainly by the executive director and with heavy, heavy influence from solar companies that are interested in coming to Grant County and making projects, and with very little influence from the people that it will directly affect. I would strongly, strongly urge you to come together as a group and think of a way to make this stop. I know what comes to mind. I do not want to publicly make that statement, but we have to make this stop until we can find a way to make whatever solar ordinance comes to this county something that benefits the members of the community and not these solar companies. Thank you for your time.
My name's Rex Maynard. I live at 312 East 12th Street, Jonesboro, Indiana. I used to sit on this board. And when this solar ordinance was put together, it was already started before the APC or the BZA knew anything about it. When we first found out about this ordinance, it was right before the summit out the 4-H fairgrounds, and Ryan come to me because I knew stuff about fire and wanted to know if I wanted to represent the fire side. And I said, you might want to get Bobby Jackson, the EMS, the management director, because he is head of our training center out here. The commissioners and Ryan started this. And from day one, this board, as some of you remember who was on this board, we said, Ryan, where did you get permission to do this and start this? We are your boss. We hire and fire you. He says, I have the right with commissioners. Commissioners have the right to do this. And he just kind of overbade us, didn't listen to us. And the whole time this was going on, we kept asking him. When we asked him to change the line, say in this paper here, he changed the whole paragraph. I can tell you, it went back in the favor of the solar companies and the commissioners. He didn't do what we asked him, and we argued with this all the time. That's why at the final end, when the last draft come to us, when we got to read it, we were so sick and tired of him changing it back to fit the commissioners and the solar companies. We said, let's give him this draft. We're done. We've been here over a year or more. We're not going to get nowhere. This is where we need to go, and we think it's the right one. But the commissioners didn't want to listen. They didn't want to follow what the state law says, how they would put the nitpick and bring it back to us like a contract and pick at it. They just said, you're going to eat it. And that's what they did. And I want this board to know, because I used to sit there, President, and I used to say, how? And it's like, don't you worry. Don't you worry. I have the right to do this, me and the commissioners. Maybe the commissioners does have a right to do an ordinance. But who did he work for? He works for this board. You board hard and fire him. And that's where we had problems on this ordinance on day one. The ordinance was already started with one draft before the APC already knew about it. That's what I want you guys to know. There was already a draft out there. Because I went to that first meeting and watched Bobby talk. Because I knew there was nothing the fire department can do when there's a fire. Because I've been to training. The solar company says, I.M. said it when I took one of their classes, sit at the gate, call us. Their nearest guy was South Bend and St. Joe, so that means wait 3 or 4 hours before they come down before you can do anything. I knew what the answer was there. So that's what I want you guys to know. From day one, we had no cooperation with him. He wasn't listening to us. He was listening to the commissioners.
Thank you, Rex.
And we tried to ask him that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Jackie Sheets, 7 Grant County. I just wanted to let you guys know something to think about when you go back to your town boards, that if you allow the solar companies to come in too close to your towns, you will not be able to grow. There will be no expansion for your towns. So consider maybe putting something in writing somewhere to maybe that they can't come within 3 miles of your towns. Because if you don't, you cannot grow, because once they're there, they're there. Something to think about.
Anyone else?
Is it open?
Chester will be up here in a minute. My name's Charles Weaver from Swayze. I got a couple of questions for the board. One is, that stuck out with me, is are you supposed to be biased, or as an individual, are you made up your mind personally? It sounded like that you were trying to put words in Mr. Malott's mouth, and I wondered about, and are you against it, and that's why you're trying to change the words to it? And the other thing was, explain to me how you feel that the solar companies influenced the commissioners. That's kind of a harsh statement. I want to know how you found that, or not found it, but how you know that.
Can I answer his first question?
Sure.
Well.
Oh, you didn't ask me.
Well, I mean, it seems like the idea is we try to come in objectively and we try to have an open process in public hearings. It might be a little naive to think that none of us can come in with preconceived biases. I come in with my biases, Randy comes in with his. That's just me being honest. But I think that's the point of hopefully these public hearings and documentation, to make clear why decisions were made, and maybe even have self-reflection. You know, I came in with certain ideas to this meeting today, and I still have some of them, and some of them changed.
And I thought you did a good job.
So, yeah, if the question is, do I have biases? Absolutely. Do I work hard not to have them influence me strongly? Yes, I do. I hope I do a good job.
In response to that, but you got to put some of that aside. Mm-hmm. And these people in here, whether they're for, whether they're against, doesn't represent the 69,000 people that are in this county. They represent some more than this probably, but there's people in here that's for it and not against it, but it sounds like that you're against it. Now, my second question, who would like to answer that? You think the commissioners were bribed? Yes or no?
I have no idea.
Well,
To be honest with you.
I heard that somebody say that he knows that they were influenced by the solar companies.
It's in the evidence, sir.
Where'd you get your evidence?
Through an official records request from Executive Director.
Well, Mr. Malotta, were they influenced? And in what way?
So I would say, if you allow me to answer,
Absolutely.
all developers that come into Grant County I speak to, whether they be solar, whether they be Taylor, whether they be Indiana Wesleyan, whether they be Jen or John, I have not, my policy is, well, I try to be nice to everyone who comes in, willing to talk, and I think it is a good policy. Randy and I had a great conversation with Jen that was informational and let us know information.
Apex.
Or Apex. I want to get that information. I want to know what's out there and what's happening.
But they weren't trying to, they didn't influence you in a way that was out of line, did they?
They would give me information that was one thing out
You
of
could
50.
use.
I actually think it relates to my first answer, to be fair to those who think that there was undue influence by the solar companies, because people walk into meetings with bias. If you've had a discussion behind closed doors, where facts and figures are presented by one side and not another, before a public meeting like this, the understanding is those people probably come in with a bias towards one point or another. Now, again, you do have to take in human nature and the ability to be objective, which I think is impossible for any of us. How far, when does an email from an executive director to a potential developer become inappropriate and influencing drafting of ordinances and, with the commissioners? I think that's the question we have to answer.
Well, I agree with you, and I agree that but putting down somebody doesn't bring your point up. Not yours, but I meant if it's me putting somebody down. And a lot of what we're hearing is hearsay. And I think if
It is
I'm...
hearsay provided by the executive director. Who's
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm
So
talking
that
about the public.
has weight.
But I think that the only thing that we're worried about is the setback. Well, I'm a farmer. I'm sorry, but I'm a farmer, and that's another crop to me. And it's a cheaper crop to make more money. So,
Thank you, Charlie.
yes.
Okay, we've got 4 minutes. One more, please. My goal is to end this at
Okay.
9. 4 minutes, Ed.
Go ahead.
I'm going to time you, Ed. 4 minutes.
All right. APA guidelines. Area Plan Commission is to be in charge of ordinance creation. That wasn't what happened here. Not until November, when 4 drafts were already completed and had been rolled out to the solar companies, and they had made their request, to have the fees cut in half, have the BZA pushed out of the process. And one thing you'll also note, maybe you didn't pick up on it, Area Plan Commission is to have sole authority to approve a development plan, which is what the solar companies would be bringing. That's not what's in Draft 4. Draft 4 says the APC will have a hearing and forward their recommendations to the commissioners, who will decide the development plan. That doesn't fit state code, but it's in our ordinance, Draft 4. It wasn't in Draft 7. And also in Draft 7, there's some other things that the community was concerned about. No slave labor in the creation of solar panels. The developer was to certify that's true. There's other things besides that. There were many good things in Draft 7 that did not make it to Draft 4. Municipal setback to protect cities and towns. Yes, it was maybe a little weak at only a mile, but it was at least there. It could be adjusted up. It's not in Draft 4. Your towns are, if you get solar right up against it, too bad. Up in Van Buren, they're talking about a good development going in there. Weaver Popcorn coming back in, investing possibly $31 million. However, the solar company seems to get pretty close to Van Buren. That might kind of make expansion more difficult in the future, too. Weaver Popcorn was also looking into going into snacks. How much I got? A minute? Okay. If you read Draft 7, there are many things in there that protect the public. The public got involved in November after the Solar Summit with the APC, which is supposed to come first according to APA guidelines. Reach out, Area Plan Commission, to the public and find out if there is even tolerance for this ordinance. And if there is not, don't go forward with it. But instead, it was backroom deals. And it was influenced by the solar companies that helped create this ordinance. Invenergy even sent in an ordinance. Here's how you do it. It was one of a few. Now, everybody thinks that's the way things should be. No, I don't think so.
Thank you, Ed. Randy, I have 30 seconds. Make it quick, Andy. 9 o'clock was my goal.
Yeah, well, and then I really wanted to, because Charles has been up here a couple of times. I'm Andy Ellis from Fairmount. And he's brought up, and other people have brought up, that there are a lot of people live in Grant County, 69,000 or whatever that number is. They have a right to be here. Right. Where are they?
Yeah, good question.
And when we were at the fairgrounds back in November, 2021, my head's spinning because this has been going on for a long time. And why we keep saying the same thing over and over again is because we weren't heard back then by the commissioners. We were heard by the APC. The APC took our recommendations, tried to make it legally binding, and they came up draft 7. So anyway, people that have the opinion that they're pro-solar, they have every right to show up here. They just have not. The group, Grant County, the community, wants limits and protections on this ordinance. You know, most of us would prefer it didn't come, but that's not how we approached it. We approached it to try to make sure there were protections for those people that were affected by it. And it was ignored, and it was set up in order for the commissioners to be able to control, at least the commissioners that were there at the time. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Piggyback on that, there is an email that Charity Bailey, Director of Economic Growth, sent out asking businesses in Grant County and Marion to please attend the public hearing over the ordinance. And I don't recall anyone coming to that. You recall that, Ryan? I got it.
I'm sure it's in there.
I got it. Okay, take a motion for adjournment.
A motion to adjourn.
Oh, motion, Mrs. Bowen, we have a second? Can I do it all in favor, say aye? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Starving.